Today, on Between the Dots podcast, your Toronto Maple Leafs sit second in the Atlantic Division right now, coming off two big wins last week, while the Ottawa Senators sit 8th in the Atlantic, plagued by injuries and a little bit of poor coaching. We also discuss news in the NHL over the past week and a Hall of Fame induction ceremony, including the first ever modern-era Ottawa Senator, Mr. Daniel Alfredson. This is Between the Dots. Let's go.
Episode 8, Between the Dots. How you been feeling this week, folks?
Pretty good. You know, I wasn't too pleased with the SENS performance this past week, but yeah, I'm still feeling good though. We're still 8 points out of a playoff spot, so it's not over yet, but we need some improvements for sure.
Yeah, it's that time of year where I feel that the teams that are out of it either slide way out or they claw themselves back into it. So if they could get a few wins here and maybe be 4 points out, that would help them out. And yeah, hopefully your prediction could be right and they can make it into the playoffs. So these next few weeks will be they'll be crucial.
We'll see. How are you feeling this week? Good?
Yeah, I feel pretty good. My prediction was correct last week when I said the Leafs would win 2 of the 3 games, which they did do. They got a couple guys back from injury, so they were plagued by the injury bug pretty good there. So getting those guys back will certainly help them out, and hopefully they can get going the right direction as well.
Yeah, they still got Muzzin on the long-term injury reserve now, right? Or not long-term injury, but just on the injured reserved, right?
Yeah, he's out long-term. Like if he's going to come back, I don't think it'll be till playoffs. So I would assume that come trade deadline time, Dubas will use that money to get somebody. But yeah, Muzzin will be out for a long time.
Yeah. Matt Murray came back too this past week.
He did, and we'll touch on that shortly. But he was very good, and it was good to see him get back to Pittsburgh where it all started for him, have a strong performance. And the Leafs, Shalgren's been holding them in there, but he's been doing everything he can, and I'm sure they've been happy with his performance. Obviously it could have been better, but as a team's third goaltender, it's once you get your number 1 or number 2, whoever you think Murray is, once you get him back, it gives you confidence. And yeah, like I said, hopefully they can keep rolling.
Yeah, it's tough for me to sit here and criticize the Leafs when the Sens have been doing much worse than they have. So, you know, they're in a good place right now, sitting second in the Atlantic. So,
yeah, and it's funny how both our teams have our issues, and sometimes they're the same, sometimes they're different. But I feel like the Leafs get healthy, then the Sens get injured, and the Sens get healthy, the Leafs get injured, and it goes back and forth.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for the Sens to put together a complete game 2. They just looked really undisciplined this past week, and like losing winnable hockey games too, whether it's like not pulling through on power play and stuff or penalty kill, and just general taking penalties in the offensive zone, like just not good hockey that's going to win you a lot of games. So hopefully they can find some improvements. I know there's still like a lot of talk about possibly firing DJ Smith, and right up until the very end, like you've mentioned before, our general manager is going to support him until the moment he doesn't anymore. So we'll see what happens in that department, but hopefully we don't need to do that if the Sens can start winning some hockey games. Let's head on over to Week In, Week Out, where we tell you kind of what happened this past week for the Sens in terms of their schedule, whether they won, whether they lost, things they did well, and then we do the same thing for the Leafs as well. So I'll start off because we were just talking about the Sens. Basically, their week started on Thursday night against the New Jersey Devils. That was a 4-3 overtime loss. That one was a very tough one because it kept that losing streak going, and it was a very winnable game. We were tied in overtime, obviously, and then we had a chance, a power play, full 2 minutes in overtime, 4-on-3, a lot of good looks against a New Jersey backup goalie who had to come in, who was forced to come in, and we couldn't find a way to put the puck in the net. New Jersey gets a power play, they end up scoring on it and they win in overtime. Losing streak continues. So that kind of sucked.
I just want to hop in here real quick, and I can't believe I didn't mention this off the start, but bravo on the Movember there, Falks. Looks good. Coming in nice.
Oh, yeah.
Slowly but surely, eh?
It's pencil thin, but slowly but surely. That's right. And maybe by the end of November, it'll be a little bit thicker, but it's...
I think so.
Yeah, it's coming in.
Looks good. Anyways, quick on that New Jersey game. It's funny how we know New Jersey now. This was earlier in the week, but now they've won 10 in a row. It's crazy how when you win 10 in a row, how much has to go right for you. Like you just said, like a bounce goes the other way and they lose that game. And it's just, you have to get like nothing against New Jersey. They're obviously a very good team and they're playing well. But like, think about all the bounces you have to get to keep those winning streaks going. And for the Sens, like when they were losing a couple, like it's the same thing. Like if the bounces go the other way for a game, you win a couple more. It's tough if you're on the losing end of those, but if you're on the winning side, those bounces to keep those winning streaks going feels good.
Yeah. And on the topic still of just the Devils really quick, they did it right this offseason. Like, they went out, they traded a second-round pick for Ryan Graves from Colorado, who's on the Cup-winning team. They traded a second-round pick, or it was a third-round pick for John Marino, and then another second-round pick for Brennan Smith. So they go out and they pick up these 3 defensemen, and this is how you build a team. You build it from the back out, make sure you have good defense so that you can get the puck out of your zone before you worry about scoring goals in the offensive zone. So,
yeah, it's funny how many teams, including the Leafs are probably the worst for this, but you got to score goals, obviously, but you got to keep them out of your net. I mean,
oh yeah,
we saw how Colorado just won a cup with a goaltender. Like, I don't know, he's a good goalie, but nothing like insane compared to like Shesterkin and Vasilevsky. But like their D-core, like just having so many studs back there, and New Jersey obviously doing the same. Like you were just mentioning all those guys that they got. Like,
yeah, and they signed Dougie Hamilton too the year before that too in the offseason. So obviously, like, definitely taking a from the back out approach to things. And like Colorado last year, when they made their run at the deadline, they went out and sure, they traded for Lehkonen at the deadline of forward, but they also went and they traded for Josh Manson, who scored an overtime winner in the playoff run that they had. So like, these guys are huge. Like, you need guys that can play good defense and not make mistakes on any given night. So kind of getting back onto the Sens now. Their next game was Saturday against Philadelphia. That one we finally, thank goodness, it was a 4-1 victory. This was a 1 o'clock game.
Bravo, Ottawa.
Thank you. Yeah, it's you break out the champagne now anytime that we have a win, it seems, because they've been so far and few between. But
playing the parade, baby. Let's go.
That's right, yeah. And it's funny, after that game, Derek Brassard came into the dressing room. He's like, "We're back, baby. Let's go." And it's like, man, like, you guys won one game. Like, let's not let the highs get too high. But at the same time, this is the coach's job. Don't let the highs get too high, and don't let the lows get too low. Like, make sure you just keep putting a good effort in every game. But anyways, we won this one 4-1. This was Claude Giroux's first game back in Philadelphia, so it was an important night for him, and we came out on the right end of it, which is good.
Yeah, that's good. Good for Giroux because he's already played against Philly once this year, though, right? That was just the first home game?
Yep, the first time going back to Philly.
Yeah, I'm sure it's a lot of nerves going back there, knowing he played 1,000 games with Philly. So going back to where you've been your whole career, it's definitely a big night for him. So for the Sens to rally around him and pull out a win there, I'm sure the whole team was happy for him, and he was happy as well to beat his old team.
Yep. And then the next game, the final game of this week, was on Monday, November the 14th. That was against the New York Islanders. And this one was a 5:30 p.m. start time, so very interesting that it started then. But that was because it was a big night for the Senators and also for the NHL, that was the Hall of Fame induction ceremony that night on Monday night. So Ottawa bumped up their game time to 5:30 so that we could see Alfredson give his speech and everything. And post game, even after the loss, the Sens were sitting out on the bench. They were watching the induction ceremony and Alfredson's speech, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, those moments are cool when they go and do that and they watch there, because you watch the induction ceremony, you think guys like Stützle and Batherson and those young guys, thinking this guy gave everything he had to Ottawa, and watching him go into the Hall of Fame, just think maybe that could be me one day or a guy on the team. So I honestly think that it's got nothing to do really with the game today, because he doesn't play anymore, obviously, but I think that could actually do a lot for them. He played here, he was a great player here, we can do that, we can become a player like that, and hopefully obviously get into the Hall of Fame would be insane, but it's good for them to see that.
Yeah, so in terms of motivating them, could really be good, but didn't motivate them enough that night. Obviously 4-2 loss, and we were just the Islanders played such a well-coached system where
you could say boring. It's okay. The Islanders play very boring hockey.
Yeah, and it was another game where we lost by an empty net goal. So all of our losses still this year have come by either one goal or two goals, and the second goal being an empty netter. There's not one game where we've lost by more than one goal when it's not an empty netter, which is crazy. Ottawa's in these games. It's just they got to put it together, and I know a lot of it too has been because of injuries. We didn't have Shabbat this week. We still don't have Zub back, and those are literally our top two defensemen. And on a team that's already thin on defense to begin with, that's just so hard to overcome. Not to mention we lost Josh Norris, who was our number one centerman last year. So when you lose those guys, it's tough.
I just think it's insane. You're that close. What do you think? I know you've touched on coaching before, and sometimes there's been some coaching decisions that you don't agree with, but how does that happen that many times? You're so close yet so far, because you're not getting any points. Obviously, if the team's getting an empty netter, it's not even you're getting the point with an overtime loss or anything. But how does the same thing happen so many times and you always end up just on the wrong side of it?
I don't know, and I think it's it could be because of the fact that we have a good enough offense this year that's keeping us in all these games, but our defense is just what's been letting us down so far, and that's got to improve. Defensively, we need to be better. Discipline, we need to be better. Special teams, we need to be better. So for example, that New Jersey game, flat out, that was special teams. We have a 2-minute power play in overtime, 4-on-3. We need to score on that goal. We got guys like DeBrincat out there taking one-timers. DeBrincat had one chance where he walks right down the pipe, misses. And it's we got to capitalize on these chances and be disciplined and play a good game. And it's just it's tough, right? But still, even with that being said, it's still quite a stat for the fact that we've lost all our games by one goal or one goal plus an empty netter, which is crazy.
Yeah, that is pretty crazy. We can jump in now for the is that all you got for the Sens?
Yeah, let's jump into the Leafs now.
So yeah, we'll jump into the Leafs here. Their first game was on Remembrance Day, Friday, November 11th, and this was before the game. This was a tough one. I'm sure a lot of you have heard about the tough news on Leafs star defenseman from back in the day, Borje Salming. He's diagnosed with ALS, and it's progressing quite quickly. And it was just a few months ago he was still talking, and he obviously knew his he knew what was to come, but to think that it happened as fast as it did, and now he's no longer verbal and he's got to talk through a machine, and it's sad to see a disease take over somebody like that, and just knowing how long of a career he had with the Leafs and how he was such a star. He leads the Leafs in all-time points by a defenseman. And luckily enough, his health was stable enough that he could come there for the Hall of Fame induction ceremony. So he was there on Friday night, and the crowd at Scotiabank Arena gave him an unbelievable ovation, which is he's obviously deserves every second of that. And it was seeing his teammate Daryl Sittler standing beside him and Matt Sundin there as well, and just seeing the emotion on their face, because you know that Borja now can't say what he's feeling, but you can see all the emotion on his face. And as well with Daryl Sittler, they're just crying because they knew they were teammates forever, and they went out to battle with each other on the ice. And now seeing Sittler seeing Salming battle what he's battling, it's really sad. And I'm glad he had that night there, as well as on Saturday night they actually had a ceremony that was just for him. So they had a good video on the Jumbotron there of highlights of him from back in the day, and like I said, his previous teammates and stuff. So
yeah, that even touched me a little bit, I'll admit. You got to be a pretty cold-hearted person for that not to make you feel something. So it was a special night still, though. Yeah,
I'm glad, obviously, like we said, I'm glad he had his moment there, and I'm glad the Leaf fans gave him the ovation that he deserved. But to the game on that Friday night, I wish the Leafs could have came out for him a little bit better on that one. They lost 4-2 to the Penguins. This was a tough game for Källgren. It was 2 after 2. You're playing on home ice, like I said, the emotional ceremony before. It'd be nice to win that game, but Brock McGinn comes down and scores a little bit of a softie on Källgren, and then the Penguins add one late to win 4-2. And after the game, Källgren was talking about how he's got to be better, and that game's on him. And I mean, it's a lot of the times you hear like the goalie will know once if they let in a soft goal, they'll say it's on them. But I mean, you got to beat the 5 guys in front of you before you get to the goalie. But there was a few moments from that game where you could see that the Leafs really missed Murray and Samsonov. And then on the Saturday night game, the next night, they hosted Vancouver. This was a tough game to start. They were down 2-0 early, and they weren't skating. And Vancouver's funny. This season, they've had the hot starts out of the gate. Like, I mean, in terms of per game, like every time I look, Vancouver's leading in the game. Like, I'll look on my fantasy app or whatever, I'll look, oh, Vancouver's ahead. And then you look half an hour later, oh, Vancouver's losing. And luckily enough for the Leafs on that night, they got the better end of them, and they came back to win that game 3-2. And it was good to see Jordy Ben in this game. There was he's another Leaf coming back from injury, and he's not been known for his goal scoring, but on Saturday night there was a play in the second period where the puck came back to the point. He sneaks in, it bounces off the boards behind the net, and he buries it. So he ended up scoring the game winner in that one. They were pretty pumped for him. This was also a great bounce back game for Källgren. He played back-to-back nights, which you don't see very often, but it was like I was mentioning earlier, an emotional night with Boris Salming being back in the building, and it was nice to see Sheldon Keefe start 5 Swedish players. That was a good little tribute
cool.
to him there. And it's crazy. I was thinking like how everything has to work out. Like, it's funny, you just think stuff's aligned sometimes. Like the fact that both Leafs goalies were hurt, your Swedish goalie is your third string goalie, and how they like, it's just funny how all that works. Like, you've got Salming coming back, and it was good. I really liked what Sheldon Keefe did there, and it was good to start.
That's
good
a good
to start
move.
Those guys.
That's a good move on his part. I agree.
Yeah, and then we'll move into Tuesday, November 15th. The Leafs were in Pittsburgh. They got the return of Matt Murray, so good to see their goalies coming back, or one of them at least. The only game Matt Murray's played so far this year was the opener in Montreal, and we all know that didn't go so well, and then he got hurt right after, but he played well, made 35 saves. The Leafs went up. They were up early. They went up 3-0, and then the Penguins scored 2 goals pretty quickly to get back 3-2. It was scary. You see them go up 3-0, and you think like, oh, okay, they're hopefully going to shut this down pretty quick, and they actually had a chance to make it 4-0. But they turned the puck over, came back the other way, and Pittsburgh scored 2 in a row. This was a good night for Bunting, though. He had 2 goals, 3 points. There's been a lot of talk about Bunting lately because he's been not on the same pace as he was last year. I mean, playing with Matthews and Marner last year, he was getting lots of points, was in the conversation for Rookie of the Year, and I know it's tough, especially him being in a contract year now. He wants to do the best he can to hopefully get paid the most he can, so he might be gripping his stick a little tighter, but he spoke earlier before that game about how he's got to get back to what gave him success last year, and it looked like everything he talked about in the pregame, he went out and did that night. So it's funny when a player says something and they actually follow through with it, because a lot of the time it doesn't work like that, but it was good for Bunting to have a good night and good for Murray to return as well. A good start.
What did he say beforehand? What were some of the things he said he needed to do?
He just said he's got to get back to the front of the net and back where he goes to the tough areas and gets the puck out for Matthews and Marner. And he said that he was playing a bit on the outside, and he knows that that's not his game. So got it back to the dirty areas, and he did that, and it worked out for him.
I'm surprised you didn't say just got to get back to riding the coattails of Matthews and Marner.
Yeah. I don't know. It's good for him. Someone's got to play there. I mean, a lot of people say he got his points because he was, like you just said, he was playing with those guys. But I mean, I don't know. Good for him. He's playing on a cheap deal, and he's getting back to where he should be, especially playing with those guys. So, all in all, good week for the Leafs.
Yeah, they're sitting nice second in the Atlantic right now with a record of 9-5-3. So they're in a good place right now. Definitely in a good place. Well, Sens got another week where they can try to turn things around. It's a tough week. They have 3 games. They got Buffalo on Wednesday night, November the 16th. That's in Ottawa. So it's a winnable game. But Buffalo has shown to be a bit of a thorn in the side for Ottawa. They got Craig Anderson. It's not Craig Anderson starting on the Wednesday night game. It's going to be Eric Comrie. But nonetheless, Sens have got to come prepared for that. Saturday night is when the Senators play next. After that, that's going to be against New Jersey again. So we talked already about how New Jersey's looked really good this year, and that's definitely not going to be an easy game. But again, that one's in Ottawa. It's an afternoon game at 1 o'clock, so they got to bring their A game. And then their final game is on Monday, November 21st against the San Jose Sharks. That one's in San Jose, and it kicks off their California road trip, where they go on after that to play Vegas, Anaheim, and LA as well, all on the road. So those are going to be, these next couple of weeks it's do or die right now. We're 8 points out of a playoff spot. It's by no means over. The season is not over if we can turn it around and start playing the way we need to. But we're going to have to see something that we just haven't seen from this team this year, which is consistent, solid defensive play and more discipline. And honestly, better special teams as well. And then hopefully when we get guys back from injury too, that will help.
Yeah, that hopefully they do better than the Leafs did on that West Coast road trip, because that was a disaster.
Those, San Jose and Anaheim this year have struggled. They're both below 500, but Vegas is 13-4, and LA is 10-7-1. So those are two really good teams that they're going to be tough games, and guys have got to just keep stepping up and trying to make a difference. Like, guys like Brady Tkachuk have had a fantastic year. Like, to see Brady Tkachuk's improvement this year has been awesome. I don't know if you saw this past week, but Matthew Tkachuk did an interview, and he called Brady Tkachuk the best power forward right now in the NHL. I know it's his brother, right? So, take it with a grain of salt, but still, the way Brady Tkachuk is playing right now is actually, he's elevating his game, and we just got to start playing better defensively. And I know a part of that too is we're missing our top two defensemen on a defense that's already thin to begin with, but giving Sanderson more of an opportunity, you're going to see him grow, and hopefully other defensemen need to step up, not necessarily our forwards, but as a team we need to come together and start playing better hockey and win these games that we're coming out on the wrong side of, and it needs to happen soon, or else DJ Smith is not going to have a job if this continues, and he shouldn't. So and I really don't as much as Pierre Dorion says, oh, we're loyal to him, we're going to give him benefit of the doubt. I think that's what's happening right now. I think he's saying, okay, we need to be patient with it, we can't overreact 17 games into the season. But at the same time, we're almost at the 20-game mark. If we go through another week this week of losing, if he's not already on the hot seat, his time might be over. So we'll see.
Yeah, no, it's a big week for sure. And I heard that you mentioned there that the Sens have one against New Jersey this coming week, and as do the Leafs. So, speaking of New Jersey, let's just listen here to what a reporter had to ask Jack Hughes this week. I thought it was pretty funny.
What can the Devils do to gain a little bit more consistency throughout those full 60 minutes?
We're on a 9-game heater. I'd say we're doing okay.
You got to love that honesty from a player when he's just you know what, what kind of a question is that? We're on a 9-game win streak. What do you mean? Consistency.
What is that reporter doing? Are you kidding me?
Well, she was talking about consistency within the game, which is a fair question, right?
No, when you've won 9 in a row.
Okay.
What?
But she's okay, 60 minutes in terms of this game. It doesn't matter if you won 9 in a row. You should still be looking to improve at all times. So I know she's being nitpicky when she's comment on your consistency within the 60 minutes, from period to period kind of thing. And he gives kind of the sarcastic response back where he's what do you mean? We've won 9 in a row. And it's funny when you hear a player be that honest, and I see where he's coming from, but she's just trying to look for ways that they can improve, I guess. Yeah.
I just comment on your consistency. We've been consistent. What is he supposed to say?
Yeah.
I don't know. They're I get it, I guess.
Yeah.
Your consistency throughout this game, but I don't know. That's
respect to New Jersey for winning that many in a row, though. So
yeah. So yeah, the Leafs have the Devils at home on Thursday, November 17th. Then on Saturday, they are home to the Buffalo Sabres. There's been quite the good hockey games lately between the Leafs and the Sabres. Last year, thinking back to the Winter Classic and Matthews getting suspended for cross-check and Dahlin, and just there's been a lot of games lately where the Sabres have actually had the Leafs number. So hopefully on that night, the Leafs can win at home.
You know who's really impressed me from Buffalo?
Thompson.
Is Tage Thompson. Wow. I'm impressed with his play this year. And also Dahlin a little bit too, but that guy was a super high draft pick, obviously. So, you expect that kind of stuff from him. But Tage Thompson was kind of a sneaky pick, and Like he was a 40 goal scorer last year too, which is like people forget. Like he's a great goal scorer, shoots the puck a lot, and yeah, hopefully this week the Sens and the Leafs can hand Buffalo a couple of losses, so that way maybe the Sens can pass them in the standings.
For sure. Yeah, no, he's an unbelievable player, and when you see a guy who's like, he is massive and he's got insanely good hands, can shoot the puck like crazy. Like normally if you see a big guy, you think like, okay, this guy, well, hopefully maybe he's got a hard shot and he'll be able to grind in the corners, but that is not Tage Thompson. Well, he's got a good shot, but he's got all the traits of a good NHL player. So
yep,
he's I'm sure he's only going to get better.
Yeah.
So
another big like power forward too. We were talking about like Brady Tkachuk being a good power forward, Tage Thompson as well. Another good power forward. But like Brady Tkachuk, it's funny. Going back to that Matthew Tkachuk interview real quick, is Matthew Tkachuk also made a comment saying that Brady can actually outbench him, despite being like, and he says when they work out, Brady can outweight him for most of the exercises they do. And he says now that Brady just focuses, because he said he's so naturally strong, he just focuses on kind of doing like yoga and like more like stretching exercises to keep his body like nice and flexible and whatnot. But it's nice to see Brady develop this year. And yeah, Tage Thompson as well, great power forward. That's also, his development's going really well, and it's just another good player that we're going to have to face in the Atlantic. So,
and then on Monday, the Leafs finish up with the Islanders, another team they've been hot and cold this year too. But like we mentioned, they play a boring but effective style of hockey. So, like we mentioned, they play a boring style of hockey, but hopefully they can find a way to score. And depending on who's playing, whether it's Murray or Shalgren, or I know Sanov's going to come back soon, hopefully they can shut the door and keep them going in the right direction. Just quickly, one more comment on the Tkachuk brothers there. Funny, he sounds, Matthew's like, it makes me think that Brady's like, yeah, man, like we're just not having a good year. Like talking to his brother, like, I just wish we could be better. And he probably goes, well, do you want me to like go out in the media and pump your tires, tell them you can bench more than me or something? I could say you're the best power forward in the NHL if you want. Yeah, sure, that would be good. Go tell the media that so it doesn't look bad on me. Okay, brother, no problem.
You know what? He'll back it up though. He'll back it up. He's always prepared to back it up. He never backs down from any fight or any sort of criticism or anything, so I'll give him respect for that.
Fair enough.
Yeah. What we want to talk about next is just give you kind of a NHL standings update. So here's a look at the NHL standings right now. These are the wildcard standings. So if you take a look at the wildcard right now for the Atlantic, Boston's leading the way with a record of 14-2.
Yeah, Boston has been, I know we talked about it earlier and in a few weeks ago. It looked like they were potentially, with the injuries to start, they were gonna fall off and maybe not even make the playoffs, but they've proved everyone wrong with a 14-2 record to start. That's very impressive, and they are showing that they are a top tier team in the NHL still.
Yeah. Yep. And then for the Metro, you see New Jersey's leading the way, 13-3. Islanders and Carolina are rounding out the top three teams in the Metro, and then Toronto and Florida rounding out the top two teams, or the top three teams in the Atlantic. And then the last wild card spots are coming down to Tampa and the Rangers with 19 points. And then right behind them is Detroit, Philadelphia, Montreal, and they're all within, and then Washington as well, and they're all within 3 points of that final wild card spot. So still a really tight race. Lots of time for teams like Ottawa, who are at the bottom of that list, as you can see, to make up for it and try to get those points, shorten that gap at least. in the meantime. Like, it's not going to happen in 1 week, obviously, but you just got to start playing good hockey and say to yourself, guys, we got to start winning 2 out of 3 games. 2 out of 3 games. Like, we can't go on these, like, lose 3 in a row anymore. Good teams don't lose 3 in a row. So you got to say, you know, how do we bounce back from losses? How do we make sure that we're bringing our best game every night? So that's kind of, I don't know if you have any more comments on the Eastern Conference here, but there's the list of the full Eastern Conference.
I just think looking at all those teams, we've been talking about it a lot this episode, but like New Jersey at 13-3, like I just think that's insane. I mean, and to think they've won 10 in a row. So they started at 500, they were 3-3, and now they've won 10 in a row, 13-3. Like,
yep,
that is unbelievable how good they've done, and I guess we'll see if they can keep it up. But
what about Columbus too, all the way at the bottom? It's funny because that's where Johnny Gaudreau chose to sign, obviously, this year, right? So
yeah, Columbus is, I know Patrick Laine has been in and out of the lineup, and
he's hurt now for 3-4 weeks, I think, again. So
yeah, like he's hurt again. It's been a tough start to the year for them, and same with Pittsburgh. Like Pittsburgh started strong, and
Washington too, 7-9. So
yeah,
tough. That's by their standards. That's not a good start either. So
you know, a lot of those teams have a lot of work to do if they want to get to where they want to be ultimately and get in the playoffs.
Montreal too, being above 500 with 8-7. Like, I'm surprised with them too, with mainly how good Suzuki and Caulfield have looked on that top line. Like, they're the guys who are carrying it for them this year. So
Kirby Dach as well.
Yep.
It's funny to think, like, Chicago, I wonder what they're thinking right now. Like, giving up on a 21-year-old guy, like saying you got to rebuild and you don't want a 21-year-old to be included in that. Like, I don't know. He's looked really good for Montreal.
Yeah. Did you want to touch on the Western Conference at all? Maybe like just one or two of these teams?
Yeah. We'll touch on it quickly here. It's obviously, you can see Vegas at 13-4. They are a powerhouse. They've been doing very good this season. They had a very long win streak of their own, and Eichel's been more comfortable now playing a full season there, and he didn't have to worry about the surgery, then coming back, and then as well with the Vegas goaltending, their Robin Lehner has been out, so they got Logan Thompson, Aiden Hill doing a very good job for them. So yeah, no, it's good to see them. And another surprising team there. We got Dallas leading the Central, but I just want to touch quickly on Seattle. Seattle has done, they've been night and day compared to what they were last year. They currently have a record of 8-5-3. They're doing very well.
Yeah,
they've got a few trades in the off season, and a guy like Matty Beniers doing well with them, and hopefully for their sake they can keep on rolling.
Yeah, like if you take a look at their lines, they got a solid team. Beniers too, like you said, looks good, but like look at their depth down the middle too. Like Wenberg on Columbus, he used to be play for Columbus. Like he's now on that team. Yanni Gourd's there, so they got really good depth up front, and then their defense too. Like they went out this offseason and again doing things the right way. They go out and they get Justin Schultz, like a good defenseman. And look at the improvements that it makes for their team, right? Like you got to have these guys that can go out there and play good defense without making mistakes for your team. So that's something that I wish Ottawa had done this offseason that we were supposed to do. And maybe rumor has it that one of the deals fell through that we had in place. Maybe one of the guys we were interested in, rumor was John Marino, and he ended up going to New Jersey. So who knows? Maybe we just got outbid, but you gotta have good enough defense. And the fact that like Ottawa went into this season with the same defense that we had last year, plus Jake Sanderson, who was in our system, is just like not good enough. Like, and that's on the general manager this offseason. Like, it was a pretty obvious need that we needed to not have Zaitsev in the lineup, and that we needed to have somebody better in there. And it's like, it shouldn't have taken this long, and that's part of the reason why we're struggling so much right now, on top of injuries too.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of hockey been played, but obviously still a lot more to go, and it'll be interesting to see around Christmas time where all these teams sit and who's really fallen off and who's maybe regained some confidence and got back into the playoff picture. So there's a lot of big hockey coming in the next month.
Yep, for sure.
So obviously me and Falks focus in here on the Leafs and the Sens and how their NHL teams are doing, but I thought it would be a good idea to just quickly have a look at the AHL teams are doing, how the Marlies and the Belleville Sens are doing, see if there's any guys potentially trying to play their way on to a Leafs or a Sens roster in the near future. So we've got the stats up here for the Marlies. We got Joey Anderson leading the way, 12 games. He's got 16 points, 8 goals, 8 assists. I haven't really seen much of the Marlies games this year. I've just heard the guys on TV talking about how impressive of a season Joey Anderson's had, and hopefully that keeps up for him. We know that he's like a guy that's just on the fringe, but if he keeps doing what he can to lead the Marlies, hopefully he can make the next step and get into a game with the Leafs.
Yeah, it's funny. I just realized that you actually have 2 ex-Senators on your AHL roster. Logan Shaw last year, he played for the Belleville Senators, as well as I think a few games for the Ottawa Senators, and Adam Gaudette is in the AHL right now as well. So ex-Senator there, both guys on your on the Marlies.
Yeah, and you can see, looking at the names there, a guy like Pontus Holmberg. He's been a guy who's been up, had a few NHL games, and he's been good for the Leafs. He's obviously not known for his goal scoring, but more of a shutdown guy and a good defensive forward. So
yep,
he's been good, and hopefully the guys on the Marlies here can keep rolling and make the step to hopefully play with the Leafs in the near future.
Yeah. So Belleville, in terms of that, we got Jake Lucchini, who's leading the way. He was last year's MVP for Belleville, so he's back. Obviously, just doing, and we haven't seen him up much in the NHL. So maybe time to give him a call and shake things up on our fourth line, because our fourth line has looked just they've been on for a lot of goals this year, which, I mean, ideally you can put out your fourth line and hopefully not have to worry about them getting scored on. They just play a good shutdown physical game. But yeah, so maybe some change coming. Igor Sokolov, he was our second round pick 2 years ago. He's 22 years old, and obviously he's doing well so far, 10 points in 12 games. Lassie Thompson as well, doing pretty good for a defenseman with 6 points. Obviously, you don't like to see the minus there. That's not a good sign. But, Roby Arventi, too, another one of our second-round draft picks. He's got 5 points in 8 games. And Ridley Gregg as well, 5 points in 8 games. So, Philip Daoust as well, too, is a guy who's surprised a lot of people. A young guy that's come out of the queue, and he's done pretty well. But yeah, basically, this is who we called up this week in response to that Shabbat injury, was Jacob Larson. So he makes his NHL debut he did make his NHL debut in that the Monday night game, against the Islanders that they lost in. He made his debut that day, but obviously Bernard Docker, we've called him up. He's now with the team. And yeah, I'll be curious to see which guys stay, and which guys maybe later on in the year can get the call up as well.
Hopefully those guys that you mentioned, like, it's good to see Bernard Docker getting into the NHL lineup with the Sens, and obviously that gives confidence to the other guys on the roster to hopefully they can play their best and make the next step like we mentioned. So good to see Lucchini having a good season again. And what do you think about a guy like that? Like, Lucchini's leading the Belleville Sens in points, and obviously is really close to getting into a few NHL games. Like, if you're in Ottawa, do you call that guy up and you put him on the fourth line? Like, I don't know. It's tough with call-ups like that.
Yeah, it's tough because, like, a guy like Kastelik or Parker Kelly, who are on our fourth line right now, if they were down in the AHL, I think they would have similar numbers to that as well, being almost a point per game. So it's tough to say. Very tough to say. But again, if guys are struggling on our fourth line, then maybe it does warrant a call-up for a guy like Lucchini, and so we'll see what happens. But we actually have something special coming up, something special for a Between the Dots podcast episode.
Yeah, so looking at the AHL rosters here for both our teams, you can see a name there, Kyle Betts. He's actually a friend of the show. We're looking forward to having him on here. We're going to get him on in the next few weeks. It'll be nice to have a professional hockey player coming on the podcast and talking about his career so far with hockey and how he's been going through different. Obviously, he got his stats up here on the screen, how he attended Cornell University and how all that was, especially through COVID and where he played minor hockey, and now obviously he's playing games with the Belleville SENS. So
yeah, I'm really excited to have a chance to talk to him, ask him about his college experience and just like his experience so far with pro hockey as well. So we have that booked and coming up. So very excited and looking forward to that too.
Yeah, no, it'll be fun to have him on. We're looking forward to having Betsy on, and like Falks mentioned, hearing about his college experience, and that'll be an episode that you don't want to miss.
Yeah, for sure. So you can see he's from Flesherton, Ontario as well, and you said that's your hometown or near your hometown, right? You went to high school with him, right?
That's where my high school was. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. No, it was played high school hockey with Kyle, and safe to say he was the reason our team went to OFSA the one year, and yeah.
So looking forward to having him on. Looking forward to chatting with him more.
For sure.
So now we want to talk about one event that happened this past week. That was the Hall of Fame induction ceremony that happened on Monday night, where we saw Daniel Alfredsson be the first ever modern era Ottawa Senator to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. So congrats for that. And it's just crazy to see what he means for the city of Ottawa. Like, they chant his name in games when he's not even in the building. Like, what he did for the city is the city of Ottawa, and for that team, it really shows in the fan base.
What's your number one memory, do you think, of Alfredsson? You got one that sticks out?
For me, it's his goal that he scored to send us to our first ever Stanley Cup final. He scored against Buffalo in overtime, which won us the conference championships and brought us to our first ever Stanley Cup final appearance. I know we went on to lose that to a stacked Anaheim Ducks team, which had multiple Hall of Famers like Scott Niedermayer, Chris Pronger, Teemu Solani. They also had Getzlaff. They had Corey Perry. So, like, that team was pretty stacked. I'll give them that. And they had Jaguar, too, in net. Like, they were just so well-rounded. Ottawa, obviously, was a really good team that year, too. Like, they were elite. That was when we had Heatley, Spets, Alfredsson as our top line. We had guys like Volchenkov blocking shots like crazy on defense. Like, it was a good time for the Sens as well. But again, yeah, that's my favorite memory of his. He's got a lot of great memories. Other players that got inducted this week include Daniel and Henrik Sedin, as well as Roberto Luongo, and then also that's it for players. Actually, Rika Salinen and Herb Carnegie were also inducted. So yeah, the Sedin twins were quite the duo as well. So it's nice to see them going in together. And we just wanted to also kind of look forward into next year's class as well and see who potentially could be going into the Hall of Fame next year. So here's the players who are eligible for the first time. We have Corey Crawford. We have Justin Williams, we have Henrik Lundqvist. So those are the main three there that are first-time eligible. Out of those three, do you think any of those guys are first ballot Hall of Famers?
I don't know. That's obviously a stellar list. When you think of Justin Williams, Mr. Game 7, then you think of Lundqvist, just like he was such a good goalie for so long. Like I honestly don't know if I was to pick one of the three, but I mean, Lundqvist, I'd love to see Lundqvist get in the Hall of Fame. He was just entertaining to watch every year, making highlight reel saves, and unfortunately he never won a Stanley Cup, but was insanely good in New York. And yeah, I'd like to see him get in.
Yeah, he did have one Stanley Cup final appearance in 2014. I agree, by the way. I think Lundqvist, out of all those guys, I think is the only one that will get the first ballot call. Not any knock on Justin Williams or Corey Crawford. They were fantastic players as well, but just like as first ballots, I think it's Lundqvist out of that list who's going to be getting the call. Some other guys that are in consideration: Rod Brind'Amour, Alexander McGillney, Sergei Gonchar, Patrick Elias, Chris Osgood, Jeremy Roenick, Keith Tkachuk, Henrik Zetterberg as well. So a long list of guys also that could possibly be inducted into the Hall of Fame. One guy that stands out on that list to me, actually, that I'd like to see next year get in is Alexander McGillney, and he's a former Leaf as well. But Alexander McGillney, he was the first Russian to come over and play in Canada, which is a pretty significant event or a significant accomplishment, right? At that time, there was a huge deal if Russians were defecting and coming over. So it'd be very cool to see him get in.
Yeah, it is cool to see those guys like that paved the way for other guys. You think that potentially if he didn't come over and was the first Russian to play in the NHL, or if he didn't have a successful career, like what would have happened there, and if it would have taken so much longer, or however, we don't know how that would have played out, obviously, but the guys that break down the barriers for that, for their country to make their way into the NHL, that's awesome.
Yeah, for sure. And he's also got some good stats to back it up too, with over 1,000 points. So it's he's definitely a great player that we could possibly see next year getting the call.
Yeah, another one you just mentioned briefly there is Rod Brind'Amour. I'd love to see that guy in the Hall of Fame. I mean, he's a Stanley Cup champion. He played almost 1,500 games in the NHL, had almost 1,200 points. He's and obviously he's a great coach now, but back in the day he was an unbelievable player, and I'd like to see him get in.
Yeah, he won the Selke Trophy in 2006 and 2007, so some major awards to his name there as well. And then speaking now to his coaching career, which obviously is a whole different side of things in terms of being inducted into the Hall of Fame, but he won the Jack Adams last year, or in 2020-2021, he won the Jack Adams Trophy. So he's obviously got a knowledge of the game as well, which is, why he was one of the best defensive forwards of his generation. So yeah, maybe we'll see him be getting the call next year as well.
Yeah, no, hopefully. There's obviously a lot of players that are deserving of getting nominated, and the ones that make it in, those are some insane careers.
Yep. So that concludes episode 8 of Between the Dots podcast. We just want to reiterate that we are not professionals by any means, so bear with us through any of our technical difficulties, and we really appreciate all the support. Again, our episodes are released either on Thursday or Friday every week, and we focus on the SENS with the Leafs, as well as big events that happen in the NHL. In the coming weeks, like we mentioned, looking forward to having Kyle Betts on the show. Christmas episodes coming up, so going to be a lot of fun. How many wins are the Leafs getting this week, Kijo?
I want to say 3, but I'm going to stick with the 2 or 3 like I did last week.
That's a good way to look at it. Honestly, if the Sens can grab 2 or 3 this week as well, I'd be happy with that. So we'll keep you posted and keep you updated as to how they're doing throughout the week. And yeah, we'll see how it goes this week. As usual, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening. And go Sens, go.
Go Leafs, go. Keep it rolling, baby.